Hello, hello, everyone. Are we ready to get started? I mean, I guess I'm talking, so I'm kind of forcing the issue here. So let's get started. Welcome to Kyong Choi, who is visiting us. Woohoo! So very briefly, this is the first presentation by our visiting guests this year, and Kyong Choi was here a couple of years ago. Neither one of us can remember exactly what year. Does anyone? What was that? All right, 2019. So you know, pre-pandemic, which was like a different lifetime ago. So anyway, we're super excited to have her back, and I'm just going to pass this on and let her take over. So yay!
Hello, I'm Kyong Choi. Can you hear me okay? So thank you so much for joining, and I'm really excited to be back. And this is 10th anniversary. I cannot believe how successful this institute has been. So welcome back to some of you, and welcome to new comer. And this has been a wonderful institution, in my understanding, helping composers and performers together and really explore the way of adjust and adapt and edit what's the best way to present our music in the on stage. So I have been always really grateful for this institute, and I'm also grateful for all these wonderful faculty and staff member working. So, and I'm thankful for being invited to share my music and art. So without further ado, I'm going to talk briefly about my background, and some of you probably already heard about these things, so I'm sorry for the overlap, but there are also new things that you can probably hear. So I am living in Chicago. I teach at Roosevelt University, and I've been there for 18 years, and I love that institution. And I teach music composition and sometimes electroacoustic music and sometimes other topics. And I also love teaching private lessons. I also experienced some of the lessons today, and I enjoyed thoroughly. And thank you so much for sharing your music with me. And I also do some other things like painting and doing some 3D animations and other areas. My way of thinking about art is really exploration. And wherever I go, I try to see opportunity, how differently I can do. So it is not so much about establishment, but more about leaving what I established, so to speak. So I will tell you a little bit about my background. I taught myself how to play organ. And it was a little pump organ, and I didn't have any musical training like some of you here with really early age. I just loved messing around sound. And I also learned how to do calligraphy. It's a black ink art, in which I really love. And I listed some of elements next to it that what I feel I learned from all these activities later. So you can see gesture, movement, and flow of energy in calligraphy is directly impacting the way I think about sound. And I went to college to study science, and my special area was chemistry. And of course, I love the reasoning and logic and structure in nature. And I deviated from that to study literature in my master program. And especially I studied the poetry. I'm from South Korea, and I love the Korean poetry in certain period of time. So I learned from that artistry, a craftsman refinement. And of course, anything can be anything. I can map into anything. But these certain disciplines taught me areas that I value and carry to what I'm currently doing, which is mostly composing and different art making. As you can see, because I moved around different disciplines, what's happening in those movements is actually your way of thinking is also shifting. And a lot of times we are so bound to how to define ourselves and our identity. So we sometimes get lost in that and losing ability to be influenced by other things and morphing into something different. And I've been fascinated by myself, how my way of thinking changed over time. And that's one of the theme that I'm trying to share with you today. My way of thinking evolved, and I'm still enjoying that process a lot. So I'm not really big fan of establishing this is my way, kind of. I'm always looking for how perspectives can be seen differently. And that's where I stand at this point. So when I got out from science, I was very much into this scientific world, as you can imagine. And when I changed to literature, I made this joke all the time. And when first seminar I attended in literature, and I was just stunned by the fact that people are just arguing over things without actual evidence. And that shook my head, truly to the different space. And not that I don't think literature theory is not sort of debatable or anything like that, but just scientific evidence that we are looking for is not necessarily in that field. And that itself is taking some time for me to adjust and adapt. So first thing that I did when I actually do composition is trying to really create this mapping in my head about conceptual world that I lived in. So in order to create that, I used non-musical elements with my philosophical structure. So I was really interested in this structure shaping. And that is sort of like my first way of thinking about composition. And this is a great example about string quartet, the first piece I wrote, which never actually premiered. Yeah, this a lot of times is the case. I thought about molecular reaction in chemical bonding, and thought about each molecules and their behaviors and how they can actually map into things. And then I mapped into these 4 instruments and then kind of emulate their behavior and then see what it's like. As you can see, of course, there are some relevance, but at the same time, there's also arbitrary thinking going into to create satisfaction of myself as a thinker to really create that sort of, so to speak, quasi-random space. But that was my mind at the time that I enjoyed thoroughly. I could see everywhere, I can map everything. So my mind was like, wow, everything in this world can be mapped into sonic element. And when I after literature study, I came to United States. The reason I came to United States is because my country didn't want me to actually study music because I was too late. And that's the culture at that time, and I think it's still the case. People are very strict about starting very early. When 3-year-old, you have to start studying music. So by the time I tried to go into different field, I was already too old for them. And for me, it was like I was 25. To me, that's the beginning of life. But still, for them, it's like already you're too old. So I came here, and luckily they accepted me, and they were okay with it. So I am grateful for this nation, allowing me to express my artistic journey. And the study I did in master program, I learned electronic music and programming. It was algorithmic approach, and I studied the C+ and the Max, which was really interesting and fascinating. And one of the things I did was a Zodiac piece that I used with a C+, and then used C sound. Sorry, C+ is not the word I was going to use, C sound. And I mapped into these Zodiac signs and starting to have fun. Each shape has some kind of horizontal and vertical views, and I can kind of create things. And then I started to mapping into dynamics, and again, my mapping continues. By the way, if you have any question, please raise your hand. And also length and all these things. And then I started thinking about, it's an entire ear. How can I make this into entire ear structure. So I mapped this into actual 365 second instead of year, because now I think actually it's possible to have a piece that lasts year. But at that time I thought it might be too much. So I starting to create score file in C-Sound that creates this data from the mapping I had, and then I assigned instruments to each of the month shape. And I thought about some structure, of course, so that the middle section is the most tense and the other one is less, things like that. But again, this is a relation to what I was talking about, mapping and creating structure. What has been missing in my understanding now is sonic nature. The investigating sound itself wasn't really there. And it was probably a little bit of immaturity as a writer, but I was so fascinated by that conceptual world that was actually necessary for me to go through that path. Again, I don't regret anything in my life. Everything helped me, everything else, so it's all fun. Next step was I was having a very serious car accident in my doctoral program year, and I completely lost all the things. My health, my ability to attend school, and etc. So I was stuck in a nursing house for a while, and then in the room, tiny room, and I start feeling kind of depressed. And so I started trying to compose. Of course, that's the best time compose. Come on, but I actually couldn't compose. So I started messing with the color and, etc. And I started finding joy of visual art. The challenging time in our life always brings something bouncing in the end. Not always, but most likely. And that was the time that I started to work on painting. Of course, I never learned how to paint. I never went to school. I don't know anything about painting, but I just love the fact that I can work with material directly. And then it gives me response directly. I don't have to wait 2 months to hear the sound or anything like that. So I just enjoy starting to responding to material itself, and that's where I starting to see what material actually is without having actual concept in my head. So that I found it's really invaluable lesson for me. So I did a lot of painting. I'm gonna just quickly show you my paintings. Are you okay with it? Yes. So I use a rope, and it's acrylic. Sometimes I use oil. Sometimes I use watercolor. These are just different time period. I didn't paint like this right away, no way. I had a really rough and crude color in some lines, and I had this very simple things I messed around. So these are a little bit more, in my understanding, kind of went through different try and error, and then find something that I actually like. So these are bull, however you pronounce, and the elephant, crocodile, all the zoo. Welcome to the zoo. It's gonna go into somewhere else. This is an old man with a pipe, with a hat, and guitar. My husband is guitarist, and I have 6 strings in there in a sgraffito effect. So sgraffito effect is like you color everything, all layer, and then carve. And you see these under layers. These things are all very applicable to music making as well. This is the first commissioned piece. It's hanging in someone's house right now. It's pretty big. And I could not believe I actually got commissioned, which is crazy. Anyhow, and keep going. And I enjoyed painting to the point that I don't see myself composer or painter. It does not matter. I just like exploring anything. And all these things are product of my try and errors. And if you don't see this, but it actually has a lot of texture. So I have a kind of quasi a 3D texture in 2D painting. And trees. Sometimes I can't come up with name. Title, mountain. This is in my house. If you want to visit my house, you'll see this. You know what? Where I can put my paintings, just my house and office. Though that's a problem with paintings. You just accumulate things. I'm a minimalist in my life, not musically, but I don't like accumulating things. But painting becomes a problematic, you know. So I need to start giving away, or as a gift. And when I moved to Chicago from U of I, Urbana-Champaign, when I did the doctoral program, where I started painting, I actually ended up renting a studio big enough to do like a 10 feet painting. But when I came to Chicago, it was too expensive, so everything becomes small. Everything becomes like water because, oil, come on, you can't ventilate. And so it's medium changes. But doesn't matter because it's still fun. So this, you see how smaller now it becomes? And 8-inch, yes. And I love Picasso, so I kind of followed him and, hey, I'm here, tribute. And these things, great. And these are more recent. And I use this title, and then my friend started calling me, Kyung-mi, what are you really sad about? So I said, oh, it's not. It's the artist mind who can have a compassion toward unspeakable sorrow. So she was like, oh, okay. I thought you have some problem. And this is a daydream with someone dreaming with all different things in their head. This is witnessing. Do you see two faces? Yes and no. It's like a yellow face and then the purple face, watching dancers, things like that. And troubadour. So, what this did to me was creating the confidence in my response to the material directly. I'm not saying these are paintings of centuries or anything, no. But I gained confidence in my responses to material, and that becomes a guidance for me to how to react. So that experience in retrospect, I'm not saying I recognize at the moment, therefore I apply to music. No, I think evolution doesn't work that way. You just came to realize later, I started composing with more tune into sound and less my pre-notion of what should happen. But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I'm departing form. I'm still really big into structure, but the structure should really be byproduct of the material's behavior. And that was how I really came around. So because of the influence painting, my idea was now material-based intuitive process, and that really gives me another layers of, I would call, strength to balance. Balance is the key of everything. Yes, do you agree? Yeah. If you have a really strong point of something, it's not going to be strong enough unless you have a balancing point, because then there's a sustainability. So that is, to me, what brings me the confidence in and efficiency of how actually structure music. And up to my listening, I'm more satisfied in many ways. And along with that painting and then love working with dancers and all that, I starting to really kind of embody further and further of other medium. And I started having more integrated method, and I would call structured intuition. As I said, I focused on sound more. A lot of great artists, especially in the sound world, they emphasize listening. And listening is very difficult for us to do in this world because we are so occupied by constant change of media and sound and politics, and everything is all in the same soup. So all we do is constantly processing. And therefore listening doesn't come in because we have no room to take in with reflection. So focus on sound really helps me to really literally understand what it means to focus. And then I also still interested in a lot of art, science, literature. And that focus gives me what I really value when I compose. So here's the thing. I take the sound and then starting to see what the sound potential will be, instead of writing what I should do for my structure. That sound potential gives me idea what kind of structure will be good. I mean, it sounds really simple to you, but it came a long way for me to really make my own in this process. So the sound itself has its own journey, and I'm really interested in the energy. Energy is very common term we are using, but music is nothing but flow of energy. And you need to pay attention to momentum, whatever that means to you. If your piece is going somewhere and then you start noticing momentum is dying, sometimes part of us like, that's okay, keep going. Okay, I arrived there. But then momentum is the key. If you lose momentum, that piece starting to sagging. And it's very hard to turn around. So understanding momentum and paying special attention to those areas that we don't like, we need to make effort to address how we can actually shift so that the momentum is growing. And I do a lot of macro, micro shifting. In other words, when I make a decision, I always think about what it means in macro sense. Even though it's very local, that local decision will impact the macro result. Does it make sense? So everything you think is however trivial or minimal, that is participating in the greater scheme of what you're doing. So you have to constantly paying attention to the moment while you're seeing both. So experienced writers doing things simultaneously. If we are little bit beginning, no worries, it will come, but you want to do it momentarily, do this, and then think back, okay, what's going to happen? Okay, come back. At least you have to do this because that will help you to eventually shorten the gap so that you are able to see both area. So genres, I write, as I said earlier, whatever medium is given to me or opportunity, I like it. So I've been doing a lot of different things and I'm still learning. There's so much I don't know and I'm happy for that. I actually like not knowing anything. Have you ever felt some freedom not knowing anything? Yeah! If you feel like you know a lot, that's trick. So watch over. I really feel like I'm learning every day from my students, my colleagues, babies and elderly people. So example I would like to play is just excerpt of 2 piano electronics, open arms, very soft. I chose these examples because, we are in a way in the Institute of utilizing electronics. To me, electronic is not something actually different. I see that as just another medium. What I treat electronics is a lot of times is a larger ensemble in a way. So I always want electronics to be part of it, not necessarily somewhere else. And I like that electronic sound to be part of the entirety of ensemble so that people don't necessarily even think, oh, this is electronic or not. Because that's how I think about medium should be. medium should be holistically approached. So that's how I think about it. And so, are you ready to listen some examples? Yes, yes. So hold on. I will thank you. And then, yes, I have to save some powers. Oh, now it's 95%. So I think we'll be good. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to play. No, yes. Okay, before I start again, this piece is Dawn and Dusk. It's a 13-minute piece, but I'm going to play just half of it. It's a scene of Chicago in the lake where the sunrise. I love it. It's just so beautiful. So I wanted to portray that scene with just very gradual color change. And the reason I used the two pianos because I wanted to cover a wide range of sounds without pianists having to exhaust their arms too much. So this one I will show you with a score, but in general I like you to just experience sound and immerse with it. But if you want to look at score, you're welcome. So here it comes again. Thank you. The bass sound was a bit louder than I expected. So next piece is a little bit different. Haha. Ready? This is with orchestra. And I'm going to play the end of the piece. And this one is, I'm going to just show you score, which I don't see any value. But if you go a little bit, you can see something going on here. So basically, I want you to listen to the interaction with orchestra and electronics. Basically, there's a big three wedge I try to create, and that is a sort of response to each other. And there's a certain sharp sound from electronics as well. So I will try to do my best not to damage your ear. By the way, I think over and over, it's very important for all of us to make sure not to use too loud sound with this medium, because once our ear hearing is lost in at least some portion, there's no returning point. So always make sure, if you really want to exceed higher, it's like eating. If you want to eat more, if you stop there, actually it's better for your stomach. So make sure do not exceed too much. So I'll make sure I will not burden your ear. I really mean it. I care about your ear more than anything else. Okay. So the piece is actually really loud piece. The premiere was outside of the, it was a garden, and I was very glad it was outside. So in order to meet the orchestra sound, the electronic has to be also boosted, as you can see. So the combination, everything was pretty magnificent sound, which I actually really enjoy. But again, I'm very conscious of our ears, so hopefully this piece wasn't too loud for you. Last piece I would like to share is 3D animation that I taught myself with 3-4 times of failure, and then give up completely. And okay, that's not my thing. But then fifth time, no, did I say 4/5? The 6th time, I came back. I woke up and like, okay, I gotta try again. And something happened that particular case that kept me going. So I taught myself. And by now, after a couple of years later, I still don't know anything about this program. It's just really complicated software. It's called Blender. I don't know any of you use Blender. It's a pretty demanding software, and I am so happy that I got glimpse of something to make something out of it. This particular piece I wrote in memory of my beloved late father, who passed away almost 10 years ago, and I was very, 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 very close to him, and he was my soulmate. So when I lost him, as you can imagine, my world was just shut down completely. No light, nothing, just empty. And I gradually used my art to help myself to recover. And along with that, I wrote poetry. I actually wrote a poetry for a whole year, and I actually published that poetry with my family member and his acquaintances with all this memoir book. And that was all entire season of poetry I had from the day of he left to return of the next year. And it kind of reflects all different seasons. This particular one was actually the first poem of all the series. And he also was a big lover of music. He was the German literature professor, and he studied Thomas Mann. So you will see actually Thomas Mann picture in this video. And this was his kind of study room. The house you see is my childhood house. So I used a picture of old house and then started to make in 3D animation with literally, I'm not kidding, literally everything in this picture I designed was a brick. And I built a house. I built a house. And you wouldn't believe like I was actually architect. No, no, it was crazy. But you will see a lot of crude part too. Please forgive me. But it was an amazing process for me to really go through. So building brick one by one, and then I developed my dad's study room with some of my imagination, because in Korea people are sitting in the floor. So there is a table in the floor and all the things you will see. But the piece that you will hear is also electronic piece I wrote a little earlier in memory of my father, was quotation of Mahler Symphony number 5, the Adagietto movement 4. He loved Mahler. So I wanted to contribute him with all different angles with my poetry. So thanks. This is the piece. And I cannot do anything about that grid. So you will probably see some grid in your video. If not, great. If you see, that's not how I designed. Ready? No? Yeah. As you can see, I like goofing. Okay. Yeah, my true nature. Thank you. So we have some minutes. Any question? Yes. This particular case, so it was sound first. Yes. And I actually like sound first. That's a very good question. Any others? Yes? Oh, yes, I used the Pro Tool and I used a lot of recorded sound by myself. Yes. And I love structuring a lot of layers, you know. Any other sound question? Yes. Oh. Oh. That's a good question. I guess nothing to lose. There's nothing to lose because I have nothing. Yeah, that's the really key. Thank you. Any other question? Well, oh, yes.
I was curious about the tuning system in the orchestra piece. Was there any funny, cool temperaments in there? I was curious because the harp sounded like it might be using some microphone.
No, there's no. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Mm. Yes. I guess intuition is I just see things and like decide things, without worrying too much about, as I earlier was, oh, this is a section needs to go in this moment. I just allow that, and that will lead to the form I am eventually learning from the material. So in a way, I'm just responding to what I really see more openly and fully. And that's how I think about intuition. Thank you. Anybody? Yes? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, sort of both, but I pay more attention to what I really would like to create. So that, in a way, when you learn new software, a lot of times there are different approaches. Some people are really, motivated to learn A to Z. My case is always I want to know how to create this. So I look for how to create that, without even knowing anything. So, and then how to create that helps me to learn how to create this, so it's kind of like a chain of things that leads me to that task complete and then go next task. So it's in a way kind of a project-driven learning. That's how I do it, and that's more like satisfying to me. And eventually, I'm going to skip a lot of important things. But if I do long enough, there is an actual bulk of things I starting to understand. And of course, in the end, I realized, oh, I could have done this way. It was much quicker. But still, I like the fact that I learned that way because that gives me momentum to go next step. And I really believe in your project should give you momentum, not ideological thinking, composition is important, or I should succeed this piece. Those things are not helpful at all. The project, whatever momentum you're getting from the project is the one that excites. Oh yeah, next, what's next? It's not working, still frustrated with excitement to figure out how to solve, So I really trust my project guiding me through, not so much of other things. Yes. Yes. Oh, in the piece or myself or take a walk and meet up with friends and, forget about. The reason I like actually doing a lot of different art is if you notice yourself already, then it's a kind of red warning sign, beep, 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 You're like kind of in a moment that I have to be in this field and be successful and I have to get a job. And that is very natural. But at the same time, that's where we actually became ourselves putting more weight on our shoe. So you need to learn. The thing that I learned from moving around all these different disciplines, scientists are going crazy about establishing their idea of it's crazy. But when I moved myself from science field, all of a sudden I see all these writers are going crazy about, and I start seeing all this, everybody's crazy about. It's like everybody's crazy about their thing, but if you just remove yourself, all of a sudden it's nothing. So in a way, I'm not saying you have to take everything lightly, but when you take something really sincerely, I like the word sincerity better than seriously. Sincerity, and then just do it as you can, as you best. But if not, it's not the end of the world. So you can kind of move out when ideas are not coming out. That's fine, no big deal, But if we are so driven, we have to succeed, then what's happening is we are actually jeopardizing possible process can naturally happen, So that's why you want to understand you have so much potential in you. It's not important to direct and define what you should be. Rather, you actually observe, I can do this. More like observing mind is much better. That's I highly recommend. Thank you. Anybody else? Well, thank you for your time, attention, and I'll see you around.